And it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the MrWarrenHayes Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Warren. I hope you're having a good week so far. It is Thursday, so that means that we are going to review the previous night's edition of AEW Dynamite, which would take us back, all the way back to March 11, 2026 for this Dynamite that took place at the San Jose Civic Center in San Jose, California, a show that I believe sold out as far as WrestleTix was concerned. The last update that I was able to get before starting recording, I'm recording this on Thursday, and at the moment I was recording, we didn't get the final count, but the final update that that WrestleTix provided yesterday had 2,402 tickets distributed. For a setup of 2,408, and the only seats that were left, we were told, were essentially accessible seats, right? Like for wheelchair access and stuff like that. So, a sold out show once again for one of these smaller venues. You got to start wondering when AEW is going to start considering booking the bigger venues, especially since, well, from all intents and purposes, Revolution is going to do terrific live business for them. If we don't get close, if we don't sell out, we're going to be extremely close. And the sales. The opening sales for Double or Nothing in a couple of months started off extremely strong. So again, like there's, AEW pay-per-views have never had really that much of an issue selling, but we are seeing a trend of them selling better, and it would appear as though the confidence for coming in to see a weekly television taping of Dynamite seems to be a lot higher than it used to be, or at least, somewhat higher. How about that? Somewhat higher than it used to be. Let's not go crazy here. Somewhat higher than it used to be, and these are all very good signs. It means that the audience is back into it. They're buying back into the product and so on and so forth. So I would say overall it's good news. Do we have any comparisons as to, the last time we were here in the building and so on and so forth? Well, listen, the last time there was a show here about a year ago, it wasn't an AEW show. It was New Japan with the Battle in the Valley show on January 11, 2025. And they drew 1,664 tickets. So, take that as you wish as far as a comparison goes. Of course, New Japan strong, and especially at that time, in January 11th, the Battle in the Valley, maybe wasn't the strongest. Maybe it wasn't the strongest outings for New Japan, weren't exactly the most popular either. So, it is what it is. But let's talk about this go-home show, this AEW Revolution go-home show that we all sat around and watched last evening. The macro thoughts here is that this was another great Dynamite. I was a little down on last week's episode, and when I say down, I'm not outright saying, last week was a really bad show, and that, if you listen to my review, I'm sure, hopefully that's not what you gathered from it, but I did feel like it wasn't as strong as previous weeks. I heard a lot of people say the complete opposite of me. Okay, and that's the beauty of it as well, right? That's the beauty of this type of stuff, is that we can have different differentiating opinions. But I wasn't burying under the earth. I just thought it wasn't as strong as previous weeks. This week I felt we were really back into a groove that I really like. I felt like that Dynamite was back hitting on all cylinders, doing what they were doing best, except for one thing. And you know what? We might as well just go ahead and talk about it right now. We might just go ahead and talk about it right now. Get it out of the way, because it is the only thing on the show that I felt was a complete miss. And and it's been a while that Dynamite hasn't produced something on the show which was an unequivocal, complete miss. Of course, I'm talking about the press conference, right? And there's multiple reasons, I think, for the press conference segment to have been, go completely askew. Look, let's just set the table very quickly, and I'll get into it. And I want to start talking about it because then we'll be rid of it. We'll never think about it again until they do another one. And we'll be able to focus on all of these great things that happened on this show. Because there were a lot of really, really good things that took place on this show. So we get the press conference set up. We have Bryan Danielson who's moderating, and it's set up in a way where you just see the tops of the heads of the press corps that's there. You don't see exactly who's there. They're not being featured. They're not even being cut to when they ask questions, which led me to believe that the journalists who were there weren't actually there. Maybe they were just sending in questions. They were just sending in questions via audio clips because they didn't cut to anyone. Yeah, there was people, they were sharing microphones, but it could be anything at all. But I laughed when I saw this because I was like, oh, okay, so they're straight up doing a WWE press conference, where they're just having handpicked influencers. But I know, like, this is an angle. Like, this wasn't a real press conference, right? It wasn't a real press conference. It was all part of a story. It was all part of an angle, and the people who participated in that, well, they were all just part of the show, right? Which made me think of the old WWE pressers, which were that, but disguised as something to be, as something real, as an actual press conference, which at the very least, in this circumstance here, there's no doubt. So, you can't get upset. You can't say, you can't ask yourself, you can't say to yourself, oh, well, they were putting us on. This was never supposed to be a real press conference. Anyone who thought that this was going to be not an angle, has severely misled themselves. So we had a bunch of questions. Look, if anything, you sort of ask yourself, well, the journalists that are there being a part of the show, maybe, does that say something about them? Well, maybe a little, maybe it says a little something about them more than anything else. Anyway, they're there. They're asking questions. Hangman and MJF are answering the questions, and it just feels too contrived. It feels too stilted. It even feels a little rushed. It never felt like Hangman or MJF really felt like they had time to let the questions breathe or their answers breathe. It all felt very stunted. The execution of it reminded me of 2020 AEW when they were trying stuff out, and the fact that the audience was clearly rejecting this segment, right? When they started doing this segment, you could hear the audience. They had the audience audio coming in, and boy, oh boy, they were not into this. They did not care for it, and frankly, neither did I. I thought it was weird. I thought it was contrived. I think it was a bad idea to do it backstage. I thought that they were maybe going to do something more along the lines of what they do in New Japan, for instance, where after their match, the wrestler goes in front of a screen and they give a statement. Sometimes there's a question from the reporters in the audience who are there, I should say. I figured that was more along the lines of what they were going to do. We're going to come out, make a statement, if there were really any questions, you could get the questions. But if anything, the Jon Moxley MJF, I think it was Jon Moxley, right? Jon Moxley MJF press conference, wasn't it that? The one that was moderated by Eric Bischoff all the way back then. I thought that one came across better than this one here. The vibes were off. Neither Paige nor MJF looked natural or even comfortable doing this. It felt like a rush job. I will give AEW this much. I will give them this much. At least they tried something different. And I will commend that, right? Instead of doing the tired old the tired old contract signing and stuff like that, I will gladly shake their hand and say, well, thank you for giving that a shot. But then my other instincts kick in. And then I'm wondering, why did we feel like for the go home show, for your main event, which is already hot, which already has all sorts of incredible stakes and has people wondering and have people on the edge of their seats wondering what the fuck is going to happen at Revolution this weekend, why did we feel like we had to come up with a sports entertaining type of idea instead of focusing on something maybe a little more simple? I wouldn't have had an issue with these two guys having one last stare down, one last confrontation. I don't know why we felt like we had to try so hard. Well, if you're so smart, Warren, what would you have done? Hey, I'm glad you asked in such a condescending way, made up person in my brain. I would have straight up had both of those guys have tune-up matches. You have Hangman and MJF, both booked on the show, just against a lower card guy. Out of the tons of people on this roster that are not being used, that are not being pushed, you have more than enough selection. Like you have, Hangman face Ace Austin, and then you have MJF fight. I was going to say Anthony Bowens, but Anthony Bowens is kind of in the midst of a little something right now. Have him fight one of the Martins. Have him fight Darius Martin. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It's just a little tune-up match. So you have both guys, having one last shot in the ring. You see them get warmed up, and I think that's fine. And you can still run the same angle that you did after the press conference, which was so much better than the press conference itself. When you think about the path that we got to get Hangman and MJF out in front of the crowd, brawling, so that eventually Hangman would pull out the barbed wire plank to remind us how dangerous this is all going to be on at the pay-per-view on Sunday. Think about the entire path we took to get there. It's so preposterous. You could have run the exact same angle, right? Let's say Hangman goes on second, MJF, it happens like in hour 1 and Hangman happens in hour 2. And after Hangman's match, MJF runs in and tries to blindside them, and they brawl and they fight, and Hangman does the bit, and everyone's happy, and you get the same result, and it's much more exciting. I don't know. It's kind of like an in-ring angle. It's kind of, that's where you ended up anyway. You ended up out in front of everyone, and you didn't have an extremely tedious, awkward, somewhat rushed segment. It didn't work, and not at least in this format. Have these guys come out and just wrestle before the match. They both want a tune-up match. They both want to win before going in. They just want to stretch their legs. And you could outright call it, just call it a tune-up match. That's all it is. No titles on the line, no contenderships on the line, just something, a match in which everyone knows what the outcome is going to be. We're just going to get to see Hangman wrestle. The live crowd are going to get to see Hangman wrestle. even if it's a little bit. They're going to get to see MJF come out and wrestle, and even if it's just for a little bit. And then we'll get the angle payoff. And I think that's going to work. But look, the production on it, like I said, reminded me of another era of AEW. It felt shoddy. It felt hastily thrown together. The audio wasn't even all that great, in the segment. It just was not good. It was not good. It was a good try. It was a good try. And if they want to do it again, which I encourage them to do, I encourage them to try this again, but they have to rethink it. Now they did it once and it didn't work. It fell flat on your face. Well, you dust yourself off, you get back up, or you get back up, then you dust yourself off. You don't dust yourself off and then get back up, because you can't entirely dust yourself off if you're already like on the ground amidst the dust. While you're dusting yourself off, you might be picking up even more dust. It's very counterproductive. You should stand up first. So you get up first, then you dust yourself off, and you try again. I encourage, I invite AEW to do it again and improve upon, learn from what happened and try it again and improve next time. And I think that could work. I mean, if they also decide not to do it ever again, that's also fine. But I like the idea enough, because it does have, I like the idea enough because you can connect it to a very sports-based presentation. It makes sense. They just need to polish it off more. They need to feel it. They need to make it feel more organic than stilted in the way it was. Performative, I think, is the word I've been looking for. I think that's the word I've been looking for. They need to make it feel more organic, less performative, and I think they'd have something there. But look, in the meantime, it continues to prove my point. It continues to deliver my point that I keep saying time and time and time again. Whenever AEW tries to do things that are a little sports entertaining, that break out of the stuff that they do best, it doesn't always work out. It comes across as a little low rent, not quite as good. And look, the minute they all went into the ring, then you're like, oh, okay, now this actually rocks. Now this is good. Now this is working out. But I think the thing that really put it over, or really buried it, actually, if we want to use proper terminology here, I think the main reason why this ended up coming across so egregious is because they decided to make the main event out of this. They decided to end the show on this. We would not be, I can only assume, like, if they had done this at the 9 o'clock hour, let's say, okay, basically not at the end of the show, I think people would be a lot less harsh on it. I think we'd probably be a little more dismissive of it, and I wouldn't be starting off necessarily my review going, okay, we got to talk about the press conference stuff. I think so. I think if they had done it at any other point in the show, we would have been like, well, this was a miss. Now it's like, we decided to end the show on this. We felt confident enough, we being AEW, right? We felt confident enough with what we are presenting in lieu of an actual match to finish. We are confident that this press conference thing is going to be so good that you're going to be like, hell yeah, what a chaotic, great, whatever way to end the show. When in fact, everyone's like, what the fuck did I just watch? Now I say everyone, but like anything, there are people out there who are defending this. And I want to make myself clear. I really do believe that you're entitled to like anything you want. You can do whatever you want. You can, and that's fine, right? But sometimes, the thing you like can do things that aren't exactly great. The thing you like can disappoint you and underdeliver. And you are not beholden to this company to stick up for it and make sure that that every mistake that they make is padded with reasonings or excuses as to why it is good actually. This segment was, I believe, legitimately an objectively bad segment. And I think that pointing that out and saying that as is not a bad thing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like AEW is cooked and whatnot. Sometimes you have to be able to recognize the mistakes, point out the mistakes, and say, I didn't like this because I don't think it was good. And then you just move on with your day. And like we're going to do here, for the rest of the review, we're going to have nothing but glowing things to say about the rest of the show. That's what we're going to do here. And it's not diminishing my enjoyment of AEW either. It's just like, yeah, it's a segment that didn't land. It was a segment that was poorly produced. I would even say poorly thought out. Yes, at least they tried. That to me is the silver lining to all of this. But, people outright saying, well, if they had muted out the audience, it would have been better. No, it probably would not have been. It would have been the exact same thing. The audience reaction was normal. I think it was warranted because they're having an exciting evening of pro wrestling. Then all of a sudden, they got to start staring up at some screens to watch a backstage segment unfurl for the main event. That's not why they were there. This isn't a WWE show where people are used to looking up at screens because there's stuff not happening in the arena. That's not what this is about. But thinking something is bad about a thing you like is perfectly fine. And in fact, it's very healthy. And you don't have to absorb and swallow 100% of everything that the thing you like does and call it, cherry cola every time. I like cherry cola or whatever thing that you really enjoy. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to call it perfect or great or fun or good when something is truly bad. And this misstep here is not even that big a deal. Ultimately, the problem lies that, well, they had one more chance to really get us excited for MJF and Hangman, but everyone already is. That stuff has been done since Hangman versus MJ, since Hangman decided that he was not going to challenge for the title anymore if he loses at Revolution, which he probably will, by the way. It makes for an exciting main event, and they've been coasting off of that. They just had an opportunity to just put it over even more, get it even more hot. I don't think the lack of success of this segment is going to have any impact on the main event. If the only impact it will have or has had is on my enjoyment of AEW Dynamite on March 11, right? March 11, 2026. Right? Just sit back and I go, ooh, what am I watching? What the hell is this? Why didn't they do the weigh-in instead? So it's not even that big a deal. It's not something that will completely derail plans or make things look worse, but it was a bad TV segment. It was not good. And it is okay to say, even if you like AEW a lot, and you want to stand up for it on social media, which again is weird behavior, but you do you should be able to take a step back and say to yourself, yeah, this was kind of a miss. It wasn't great. And your mileage may vary. I really didn't like it. I thought it stunk. But maybe you're like, well, yeah, it wasn't very good. That's fine. But I think this was an objectively bad segment. I don't think anyone should be defending it. If you're an AEW fan, you should be telling AEW please don't do stuff like this anymore. Or at the very least, if you really want to do it again next time, think about it some more. But like I said, ultimately, I think it's in the bigger scheme of things, it will have no impact on the main event for Revolution. It will have no impact on sales. We're not going to drive people away. They just had the opportunity to make it hotter, and it's not. If we start to see more and more segments in AEW where they try to be creative and they try to come up with great ideas like this, then maybe we'll start pointing at the trend. We'll start going, oh, well, hey, this all started with the fucking press conference, which flubbed. Look, things happen. Sometimes your ideas sound great when you conceptualize them, when you're thinking about them, and then when you put them into practice, you're like, oh, well, we should have put a little more. You should have put a little more thought into this. It just turns out that it was a bad segment on a TV show this week. It was a bad segment, and as long as it doesn't become a habit, well, we'll just point and laugh, and in a couple of years we'll be like, hey, remember the Hangman MJF press conference? Oh boy, yeah, that wasn't great, was it? That'll be the thing. All right. Anyway, outside of that, this was a great show. This was a tremendous show, and we're going to get into it immediately with the first match to open the show, which was Claudio Castagnoli and Jon Moxley of the Death Riders taking on Konosuke Takeshita and Hechicero of the Don Callis family, of course. What a great opener this was. Again, first of all, Jon Moxley once again in the opening match, but then on top of that, you had Claudio and Hechicero going at it and exchanging holds and doing some great, just having a great one-on-one during this match where I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, well, it seems like they're setting up Claudio versus Hechicero for the CMLL Heavyweight Championship, which might be something that they want to do in CMLL, and I would be okay with that. And then of course, well, the main selling point here though was Takeshita and Mox going at it one last time before their big match at the pay-per-view, and they're doing test the strengths and shoving each other. There's a lot of there's a lot of big posturing here. A very physical match all throughout. I'm very excited for Takeshita and Mox this weekend. I like the time limit draw. You could feel like they had another match in them, and I think this is going to be it. I would not be surprised if Konosuke Takeshita wins the Continental Championship as well. And Claudio eye pokes Hechicero to get the advantage and then secure the win for the Death Riders here. But what was also of note outside of this match, which I would give a 3 3/4 star. I thought it was a great way to open the show. What was most significant here was the post match where Lance Archer and Mark Davis hit the ring and go after the Death Riders, Moxley specifically. Marina Shafir tries to interfere, and Archer just drops her, which got a big reaction from the crowd. Big boos there. And they set up Mox for Takeshita. The Don Callis family do. They set him up on his knees. They give a chair to Takeshita, and they're like, blast this guy across the head. Come on, kill him. And Takeshita's like, no, I'm not doing it this way. Not this way. He's an honorable guy. So he tosses the chair away. He wants to do this the right way. He doesn't want to destroy Jon Moxley, and he walks away, leaving his not walks away, but he talks his crew down and moves them away. And Hechicero was like, "What the hell are you doing, man? Do the Rudo stuff." This is what he's saying. And Takeshi's like, "No, I don't want anything to do with this. All right, let's keep moving. Let's go. We're going away." And throughout the match, we also had "Fuck Don Callis, Fuck Ice 2" chants which I thought was very funny. Yeah, great way to open the show. I'm excited. I'm excited for Mox versus Takeshita. Even with the angle that they did on Collision this week, which was tremendous, by the way. I don't know if you watched Collision this week. That match was absolutely fantastic, and the post match was great. Even with that, they have done such a great job to build this match and make it feel hot. It's been a tremendous ride with Mox versus Takeshita, and it's a legitimately exciting match to look forward to. So that'll be a good one this weekend. I am sure. No time limit, so they're gonna go over 20 minutes. If they go under 20 minutes, then what was the point, right? Because the point with the time limit was the fact that it ended at 20 minutes and everyone wanted it to continue. And the idea for the challenge without the time limit is to say, well, we'll take as long as we need, right? So if it goes under 20, it doesn't make any sense. So they'll probably be going over 20 minutes to get the job done. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to this entire card this weekend. We get Willow Nightingale and Persephone backstage with Renee Paquette, and they're basically putting over their match that is upcoming. Basically Nightingale congratulating Persephone on beating Mercedes Moné for the women's championship over there in CMLL, and Persephone saying, "Well, I hit her harder than you," and back and forth. Getting to hear Persephone speaking her excellent English, on top of that, dropping a little Spanish. But they give each other a little tense fist bump, and we're going to have a good, clean fight later in the evening. We get another backstage segment with Kyle Fletcher, who's there with Don Callis, and Don Callis is giving him the old pep talk. Then MJF shows up, starts talking to Kyle, calls him a beautiful man, and says, "Hey, yeah, what? Go beat up that Mike Bailey bastard. He kicked me in the face not that long ago." And Kyle Fletcher was like, "I don't work for you. I'm going to beat it up for myself, not for you," creating some tension between Fletcher and MJF. And I'm entirely for this. I'm very, very excited at the prospect of an MJF Kyle Fletcher match. That is the kind of stuff that I can easily get behind. Also continues to remind us that Kyle Fletcher is considered to be in this upper tier of wrestlers, that he's an orbiter of the main event status as well. I don't think he's fully reached that he's cracked the ceiling and that he's truly a top guy in the company. But he's a guy that, because of his feud with Hangman, we now consider an orbiter, someone who can hang around the world championship and not feel out of place. So the fact here that they're going in with a tease to this is definitely a signal of stuff that might be upcoming. Look, before Double or Nothing, we've got Dynasty, right? That's the show. MJF Kyle Fletcher, it's a good B-show main event, if you ask me. At this stage in Fletcher's career, it's a great main event for Dynasty. I wouldn't be insulted at all if that were to happen. But ultimately, the point here is that again, MJF, coming in trying to be trying to cozy up, I guess, to the other heels. But everyone's like, "Nah, man, I'm coming for your title." So we're still telling that story where MJF, the world champion, is being assailed by all sides. People coming in, want to challenge for his title. I like it. I love it, in fact. And we're not even done with Hangman yet, that Fletcher is like, "Hey, you know." Now, does this give the finish away? Not necessarily. Not to a degree, yes, but also no. It's more like, it felt more like an attack towards MJF than, a flat out challenge. If it had been a challenge, then we would have been more like, But here it's another instance of AEW putting MJF in a position where he's juggling multiple contenders, where he's got, he's just got multiple balls in the air right now that he's juggling. That's essentially it. And here's another one. Here's Kyle Fletcher. And then at the end, Fletcher tells Don is like, Don, please tell me we're not working for this guy. And Don goes, what? No. See, you never quite know with Don Callis at that point, right? So we'll see how all that ensues. But I enjoyed this segment. I thought it was very relevant. Kyle Fletcher then went out to defend his AEW TNT Championship. Did it successfully. On top of that, defeating Speedball Mike Bailey in an excellent match, like by far match of the night. An extremely fast-paced, dynamic match in which Mike Bailey dominated the entirety of the match, or at least easily at 80% of it, right? He was absolutely in control. This is the story that they were telling, that he had a counter for everything that Fletcher was doing, that he was always like a step ahead with a move, a leap, a kick, a strike. Bailey had something to counter everything that Fletcher was throwing at him. Maybe Fletcher was underprepared or whatnot, but that was the story of the match. And what we got was really exciting, very dynamic, a good, solid performance, one in which Kyle did his damnness to make sure that everything that Mike Bailey threw at him looked good, that it connected, that it was great. And I love this. I think it was in this match, right, where Bailey's doing a windmill kick, and Fletcher catches him before they hit the leg connects, but he catches him in a way that he transitions into a Michinoku driver, which was awesome. And then, of course, there was that crazy pop-up Hurricane Rana on the apron, which I was absolutely gobsmacked when I saw it, because there was so little margin for error. These two guys were just completely in confidence with each other, like ready to do anything. I absolutely loved it. And Bailey's hitting everything. He's doing poison run as he's hitting the windmill kicks. He's doing the moonsault double knees. He's doing the ultimate weapon. But then he goes to do the flamingo driver. At least he's setting up Fletcher for the flamingo driver. And then Kazuchika Okada pops out of nowhere to distract the ref. So then Fletcher rakes the eyes so that Bailey drops him out of the move. Mark Davis throws a title, one of the trios titles, into the ring so that Fletcher can blast Bailey across the face with it and get the win. I mean, it's a shame that it had to end this way, because there was such a really great crescendo. I guess the story that they told here ultimately is that Kyle Fletcher absolutely cannot beat Mike Bailey without help. He just was completely overwhelmed the entire match. Kyle Fletcher can beat Mike Bailey. I think that's the story they were telling here. If this was on a pay-per-view, I'd be much more upset. But on TV like this, Fletcher having this set up for him, losing Fletcher a heel, I should say, losing a match, right? In a perfectly heel fashion, a guy who he's going to be fighting in a trios match at the pay-per-view. I think that's fine. I think it's good. It's good heat for the pay-per-view match. It's good heat for Fletcher. And ultimately what it does is, with the quality of the match we got there and the unfortunate finish, you're like, run this again, and let's see what happens. Clearly, Mike Bailey at this point, the story, of course, is he's got Kyle Fletcher's number, and that can carry over into the next match. That could be, I could absolutely see Kyle Fletcher dodging Mike Bailey for a bit. Maybe this is the next step we do with Mike Bailey, TNT champion. You could do a lot worse than TNT champion. And I've been a big proponent of getting Kyle Fletcher out of the mid card. I've been saying this for a while. I think it was a shame that after his match with Hangman, that he was relegated all the way back. He was relegated back down, working the mid card for the TNT title, which still gave us some great matches. His matches with Mark Briscoe and whatnot. Don't get me wrong. There's good that came out of it. I just thought that that's kind of weird for the momentum he's been building. Get the TNT title off of him. Have him do stuff with some of the top people in the company. What are we doing here? Next, we had a backstage promo with Brody King saying, well, here we go. I've got a standby match again that I've got to go. I was just told that I have to go do. And, says a couple of words about Swerve Strickland and that. And then he goes out for his match where he, utterly squashes the most jobber looking guy you could have ever picked for that spot. And I love it. One of the things that I miss sometimes in pro wrestling and in our modern era right now is jobbers who look like jobbers. And if you watched, WWF back in the day, in the late 80s, early 90s, or WCW, a lot of the jobbers they'd pull up on screen to fight the stars, you'd be like, yeah, who is this guy? There's no way, right? Like the minute you saw him, you're like, there is no way this guy will ever win a wrestling match, right? And you remember some of these guys just based off of that. You remember some of these jobbers for how excellently they looked the part. And this guy was exactly that. Absolutely looked the part of a they didn't even pick up his name. I didn't even check on Cage. I don't even want to know who he is other than him being the most this is a jobber guy that they could have found. And it was fantastic. One quick note about the standby match thing. So the logic behind a standby match is if the show's running short, right? If you're running short on time, that's when you're supposed to throw in a standby match where one match went a lot quicker, so we'll throw that in there. The match, like the two matches that happened just previously, had decent amounts of time. The TNT title, they were doing the time countdown at some point, right? It went close to 20 minutes. It almost hit a time limit. And then we do a standby match. I'm like, why? If anything, you might be going a little long here because you didn't expect the match to go 20 minutes. Why are we doing a standby match? So that I thought was a little strange. I was like, that's not what standby matches are for. The idea for a standby match, just to be very, very clear, is, in kayfabe, is the promoter has two guys standing by to go out and wrestle, just in case the show starts going a little short, right? It's like, oh, we got to fill out some time here. Okay, you guys are up. That's the idea behind the standby match. So if your matches are going the allotted amount of time, or they might be going a little long, then there's no point in throwing out a standby match. And I like the standby match idea, but it also has to make sense. And I don't think it quite made sense here. That being said, Brody makes very short work of the jobber dude with the defeats him with the Gonzo bomb, and then he grabs the microphone, starts talking about how he's going to beat Swerve on Saturday, and then a masked man in a black mask and a black hoodie attacks Brody King from the audience with a chain, and I laughed really, really hard because it's Swerve Strickland who did it. And 100% that Swerve Strickland did that to take a shot at Triple H. Swerve has never been very, let me say this another way. Swerve has always been very candid about his opinions regarding Triple H. So I have no reservations in the idea that Swerve wanted to do this as a shot to Triple H and his great creative ideas that always seem to revolve around guys in black hoodies with black masks, black ski masks on. To me, there's no doubt, and I think it's I think it's fine. It's funny. They didn't make a big deal out of it either, but they did the whole thing where the guy attacks and then he lays Brody out and then he takes the mask off and then you're like, why did you? why did you need the black mask? We knew it was you. Why did you do this in the first place? Which is, part of the criticism with the black mask gimmicks and stuff. It's like, we know who it is. Why are you doing this? Anyway, I enjoyed this. I thought that was pretty funny. And then they get back into the ring, and Swerve is choking Brody some more with the chain around his neck. But Brody, in a feat of strength, breaks the chains and goes after Swerve. He beats him up, does the cannonball in the corner. Prince Nana comes in to try and get Brody off of Swerve, which he does. It distracts Brody enough, but then Swerve does a shoulder breaker, and then he runs off, or an arm breaker, I should say. And commentary did mention, he did the arm breaker on the arm that Brody King had previously got injured, was broken. So, folks, write that down in your notes. That will probably be part of the story for the Revolution match coming up, and Swerve is going to capitalize on that arm which he softened up. Mike Bailey is backstage with Renee. He cuts a little promo saying basically the Don Callis family are going to get what they deserve in the trios match with Mystico this time around, and so everything's fine. I saw a lot of people shitting on this promo. I'm like, well, it's a Mike Bailey promo. Is it because he stuttered? He tripped over one word? Maybe. But it's a Mike Bailey promo. Mike Bailey is not known for his promo skills. I don't know why anyone was shocked here. He's not a very good promo. He's a very standard, passable promo. There's people that are worse than him. I don't know. I saw a lot of fire around that. It was boy, he really blew it. I'm like, it's Mike Bailey. This is his normal promo. I don't know what the issue was. It didn't bother me. Is it because I'm assuming it's because he tripped up on a word? That's the only thing that he did differently than what he usually does. Anyway, David Finlay and Gabe Kidd, aka the Dogs, defeated Darby Allin and Orange Cassidy. This was Dave Finlay's debut. When they announced this match, I suddenly perked up and I was like, hey, I really want to see Dave Finlay versus Darby Allin one-on-one. I want to see Dave Finlay throw Darby Allin around. And I know David Finlay is not, if you're not familiar with him and you're not familiar with his work in New Japan, I know he's not the biggest guy. He's not one of these huge jack dudes. It's not Brody King, where you're like, oh, Darby is so small and he throws him around. Finlay has this understated extreme strength where that's what he'd do in New Japan. I'd call it bullying, right? With the way that he'd handle his opposition and whatnot. He has this capacity. He has this strength, just this incredible amount of strength where he's just throwing dudes around and he's doing these incredible feats of strength. And you're like, holy shit. Dave Finlay is extremely strong. And I'm like, yeah, I want to see this more. At some point in the match, Finlay does a throwing suplex. One of these where he's got the guy in the suplex position, but instead of landing on his back, he just throws him. He does that to Darby, and Darby flies. And I'm like, hell yeah, this is what you want out of Dave Finlay and Darby Allin. And now I'm kind of like, this is a match I kind of want to see. This is something that I'm like, this would probably be really fucking excellent. Because you're playing off of both guys' strengths. Darby, which is taking an ass beating, and David Finlay, which is delivering an ass beating. So I really want to see that moving forward. But in this case here, this was a good match. It was a good, fun match. I thought it had good energy. I thought the final stretch was really, really interesting. Clark Connors shows up from the audience to attack Orange Cassidy from the crowd. And then Allin hits a coffin drop, but it's caught by Gabe Kidd. The dogs then land their finishers. You've got Dave Finlay doing a Dominator. to a big reaction from the crowd too. They were like, whoa, because he does it with ease, because he's a strong guy. There's stuff that people don't realize about Dave Finlay, that the more he's going to wrestle, I think that's going to go a long way and will probably get him over with the audience, which is why I think a match with Darby Allin would be terrific. And jumping pile driver by Gabe Kidd puts everything away. Now, after the match, the Dogs prepared to attack Orange Cassidy, and they're like waving someone in. I was like, come on. And Roderick Strong comes out all dressed in black, and you're like, oh, so did they consort with Roderick Strong backstage, who's had issues with Orange Cassidy, right? And abandoned him in matches and has no interest in wrestling with him. We haven't seen him in weeks either, leaving Orange Cassidy, to his own devices. Did they consort with Roderick Strong and say, come on, after the match, we'll let you beat up Orange Cassidy? And he comes in and he teases that he's going to do it. But if you've watched professional wrestling for more than 10 minutes in your life, you saw what was going to happen. That in fact, Roderick Strong turned on the Dogs. It was a double swerve. He turned on the Dogs. He threw Cassidy into them and proceeded to take them out, which is leading to a trios match, I believe, on the 0 hour at Revolution. The baby faces all stand tall at the end, and that's what was important here. Next, we had Willow Nightingale successfully retaining her TBS championship by defeating Persephone. I enjoyed this. I thought this was good. I will always be very, very excited to have more Willow Nightingale in singles matches on AEW television. I think that's a place in which we need to capitalize more. The AEW audience is completely bought in on Willow Nightingale. I don't know why they're not pushing her harder than they are, but look, that's another discussion for another time. This was good. This was good, hard-hitting match. I thought Persephone looked good. I think that in a lot of circumstances, Persephone is. I think she's. Now, I want to be very mindful with what I'm going to say. I think a lot of people overrate her. Okay, but I'm not saying she's overrated. I think overall, people have a tendency to be able to see just how good she is for the level she's at. But I think there's a vocal contingent of people who seem to think that she's much better than she is. I think she wrestled to her abilities in this one. I thought she was good. Didn't blow the house down. I wasn't blown out of my mind. Of course, the feats of strength that she got in there. When she finally lifted Willow Nightingale into a sack of shit. Got a big reaction from the crowd, right? And the ladies, they trade German suplexes on each other. And of course, the final feat of strength where Persephone is just walking around with Willow Nightingale in the Razor's Edge position. Crowd went crazy for that because, that was very, very impressive. But Willow was able to wriggle out of that and get her into a backslide and give her a crucifix pin to retain the title a little out of nowhere. So, there was that element there where it was, I got you. And, Willow, she gave her a smile after. It's like, gotcha this time, type of thing. So, it's one of these circumstances where the loser looks good in defeat. I don't think Persephone is buried by any chance. I don't think they ruined her. I think it's one of these circumstances where, au contraire, it's like, okay, well, we can revisit this again. Another very good little thing that seed that they planted here that they might revisit down the road. How far down the road, I couldn't tell you. If Willow wanted to do the honors and go to Arena Mexico and lose to Persephone while challenging for the CMLL Women's World Championship, that's fine. I think that would be quite good, actually. So yeah, good match. Next, we got a promo package where covering Tommaso Ciampa's turning on Mark Briscoe on Collision, doing the DIY, the Johnny Gargano thing. He did it with Mark Briscoe this time. Then we get a promo segment with the Babes of Wrath. So Harley Cameron is there with Willow Nightingale. Willow Nightingale challenges Lena Cross to a TBS championship match at I believe on the 0 hour. And then the Babes of Wrath will be putting up their tag team titles against the Mega Bad 2. I guess they're freebirding now, especially since Penelope Ford is out. So now it's going to be Megan Bayne and Lena Cross who are going to be the tag team. So we're Willow Nightingale and Lena Cross double duty at Revolution this week. So good for them. And this led to the last match of the night where FTR and Tommaso Ciampa defeated the Young Bucks and Mark Briscoe in a super fun party style match. Like this was again a blast. This is the type of thing that you expect from the Bucks when they're in trios matches. Look, we've seen all this kind of stuff before, and everyone's into it and everyone's pulling their weight. I thought everyone worked super hard. No big surprise out of Mark Briscoe, who, you know, is probably the hardest working TV wrestler around. The Bucks were great here again. I thought FTR felt animated here, and it was great to see Tommaso Ciampa in this type of environment as well. He looked good. I thoroughly enjoyed the main event. I'd give it like another 3 3/4 star type of deal. All sorts of great stuff. The crowd was super into it. They were seeing guys flying all over the place. They were seeing some hard-hitting action. It was a great combination with all these guys together, and it all ends up at the end where Tommaso Ciampa hits Mark Briscoe with his running knee without the knee pad to put him away and get the win. But the big story here, of course, is that Tommaso Ciampa continued beating down on Mark Briscoe after the match. He attacks him with a chair. He chokes him out. Then he sets up 2 chairs, face to facing each other, puts Mark Briscoe up on the top rope. Mark Briscoe had been accidentally busted open during the match, so he smothers some of his blood on his chest and then does an avalanche air raid crash through the chairs, which is another DIY reference. And yeah, Tommaso Ciampa full on heel. Look, I think they did the right move. You bring Tommaso Ciampa in, people are excited, they get excited. He does the little baby face thing for a couple of weeks, but Ciampa's a heel. Ciampa is best suited to be just like to be just an aggressive, mean-spirited, nasty-minded heel. And I think it's working out really, really well with Mark Briscoe. It was a good move to do this, to have him turn heel, and it's a compelling feud. They're doing a really, really good job at it at the same time. Then we had the excellent video package recapping the whole MJF Hangman Adam Page tale right up to now, with footage going all the way back to the opening press conference for AEW, all the way back in 2019, 18, 2000, anyway, 2019, right? It was when they had the press conference. Just tremendous stuff. Absolutely tremendous stuff. An excellent video package. They really should have just done this instead of doing the fucking press conference, because that's what happened next is the press conference, and we already talked about that. So there you go. Another great episode of Dynamite. A very, very, very strong go-home show that got you excited for everything that was going to happen at the pay-per-view. And then there's the main event. Then there was the press conference. But what are you going to do? I thought it was another great show. The Dynamite continues to be just week after week. Great TV that happens time and time again. Look, AEW's on a roll. What do you want from me? AEW is legitimately on a roll right now. It feels good. It feels interesting. It feels fresh. It feels hot. And the pay-per-view this weekend is stacked. It not only is it great on paper, but it is great in 3D. I don't know what I was trying to say there. Of course, I will be reviewing Revolution as well, and that review will be available next week on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show, but will also be available in early access for members of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show channel on YouTube. So if you want to get your ears and eyes on that before everyone else, become a member on YouTube, and you will be able to get to be able to sink your claws into that before everyone else. But even before that, I will be back later tonight. If you're listening to this on Thursday, I will be back later tonight for a live stream where I'm going to be previewing Revolution, amongst other things happening in professional wrestling these days. So come and join me on the YouTube channel later tonight on Thursday. And if you can't, that's fine. And if all we do is see each other next week, well, we see each other next week. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Revolution, and I'll see you next time.